Raider Nation, let's talk surprises. In this video, we're breaking down 10 surprise roster candidates for the Raiders after the 2025 NFL Draft. These are players not included in my initial 53-man roster projection, and I'll rank them from least surprising to most surprising if they manage to make the cut. The player at number 10? Not all that shocking. But number 1? That would be a real jaw-dropper. If you're wondering about players like Omari Gaynor, don't expect to see him on this list. I actually have him making the roster, so he's not part of today's discussion. Let's jump in at number 10, Charles Snowden. A lot of people probably have Snowden penciled in for the 53-man roster, but I left him off. Why? He's dealing with a court case scheduled for July 22nd, and that's a situation the new Raiders leadership, including John Spytek and Pete Carroll, might want to avoid during training camp. That said, Snowden brings value. Last season, he recorded 39 tackles and stepped up when injuries hit the roster. He's well-liked in the locker room, and honestly, I'd give him better than a 50% chance of making the team. But the uncertainty around his legal situation puts his spot in question. That's why he lands at number 10, the least surprising name on this list. Moving on to number 9, Thomas Harper. The safety position is still up in the air. Will the Raiders keep 4, 5, or even 6 safeties? If they go deep at the position, Harper could squeeze in. Last year, Harper impressed with his coverage skills, something the Raiders need at free safety. While he's not yet a proven starter, I might actually trust him more at free safety than Isaiah Pola-Mao right now. Truthfully, this roster doesn't have a clear starting caliber free safety, but Harper showed enough promise last season to stay in the mix. And with the coaching staff's reputation for developing defensive backs, Harper's versatility might just give him an edge. Next up at number 8, Sam Webb, but we'll get to him in a moment. Coming in at number 8, Sam Webb. Webb has managed to stick around on the Raiders roster over the past few seasons, going back to the Josh McDaniels era and through the changes under Antonio Pierce and Tom Telesco. When a player hangs on that long, even spending time on the practice squad, it usually means he's doing the right things behind the scenes. Webb has good size at 6 feet 2 inches, 195 pounds, long and lanky, but he lacks the top-tier athleticism that this new Raiders regime seems to prioritize in defensive backs. Still, with a lot of uncertainty and unproven players in the secondary, Webb has a path to the roster. If he can prove himself as a reliable nickel corner, that could be his ticket onto the 53-man squad. The Raiders don't necessarily need another outside corner, but a strong nickel option would have real value. Now here's a question for you. Who's your Raiders sleeper pick this season? Someone you think could surprise people? Drop your answer in the comments below. Moving to number 7, Chris Smith. Smith heads into the final year of his contract, and while we haven't seen much from him on the field yet, his leadership and locker room presence make him stand out. Smith was a respected captain at Georgia, and even if he lacks the physical tools to be an every-down NFL player, he's the type of guy Pete Carroll loves, someone who competes hard and raises the energy of the team. With the safety room looking thin, Smith has a shot to stick around. He's not a lock, but he's definitely in the mix at number 7 on this list. Up next at number 6, Zamir White, running back. This one's a bit of a puzzle. It's unclear why the Raiders would hold on to Zamir White, but when he's confident, he runs with real aggression. We saw flashes of that at the end of the 2023 season. Sure, it's a new offensive system and a different scheme, but you have to wonder how much of White's struggles were tied to factors like Gardner Minshew's poor play, Luke Getsy's questionable play calling, or an offensive line that just wasn't getting it done. White has had issues with vision, that's no secret. But if Sincere McCormick isn't ready to go by week 1, the Raiders might need to lean on players like Dylan Lobb or Chris Collier. Lobb, in particular, has connections through the New Hampshire pipeline, including ties to Chip Kelly. Even with the addition of rookies like Rasheen Jeanty and Raheem Moore, this team may carry 4 running backs. If McCormick isn't at full health, White could stick, though you could also argue the Raiders might be better off going to the free agent market for help. Coming up next, we'll break into the top 5 surprise roster candidates. Kicking things off with number 5, Mello Dotson, cornerback from Kansas. This is where we start getting into the real surprises. Honestly, I was surprised Dotson went undrafted. During his time with the Kansas Jayhawks, he put together a strong resume. 49 tackles, 5 interceptions, 6 pass breakups, and even a pick 6. Sure, Kansas wasn't known as a football powerhouse, but over the past few seasons, the program has steadily improved, and Dotson played a key role in that turnaround. That matters. This Raiders regime seems to value players who have been part of building something, who know how to change a locker room culture. The cornerback battle in camp is going to be wide open. If Dotson can outperform someone like Decamarion Richardson, he has a legitimate shot to crack the 53-man roster. Next up at number 4, Tyreek Mallister. You can list Mallister as a running back or wide receiver, but here, we've got him slotted as a running back, because that's where his best chance lies. The Raiders love versatility, and Mallister brings just that. He's a speedy, athletic player who could contribute in multiple ways. As a gadget back, in the punt and kick return game, or as a fill-in if someone like Sincere McCormick or Zamir White can't go. Importantly, Mallister also has a connection with some of the Raiders' special teams coaches, and that might give him an edge over players like White, who doesn't bring value on special teams. Speed, versatility, and special teams ability. That combination keeps Mallister in the conversation. On to number 3, Zach Carter, defensive tackle. Carter showed flashes last season on a Raiders defensive line that was absolutely ravaged by injuries. With defensive coordinator Patrick Graham and defensive line coach Rob Leonard overseeing the group, the Raiders have restocked the line this offseason. They drafted players like Tonka Hemingway and J.J. Peaks, and they signed veteran Lucky Fotu. It's a crowded room now, but Carter has already proven he can step up when called upon. If he keeps flashing in camp, he might just secure himself a roster spot despite the added depth. Now let's get into the top 2 surprise roster candidates. Coming in at number 2, Joyner, edge rusher, undrafted free agent out of Minnesota. Joyner put up solid production in college, 32 tackles, 4.5 sacks, and 2 forced fumbles last season. He also racked up 31 pressures in 2024 and 46 pressures in 2023. Honestly, I was surprised he didn't get drafted. I thought he'd go somewhere in the 5th or 6th round. The Raiders' edge group has a lot of unknowns. Tyree Wilson has talent but hasn't put it all together. Charles Snowden has the ongoing off-field situation. Of course, you've got your headliners like Max Crosby and Malcolm Kuntze, but there's room for someone to sneak onto the roster as a developmental player. For Joyner, the biggest question is whether he has the athleticism to hang at the NFL level. But if he comes into camp with his motor running hot and puts together a strong preseason, there's a path, even if it's a long shot. He's a classic example of an undrafted guy who just needs to outwork everyone else. And you never know. A few injuries, a few standout plays, and suddenly he's making a case for himself. And finally, at number 1 on our list of surprise roster candidates, Jalin Walker, linebacker, undrafted free agent from Indiana. Walker had a big year in 2024 with the Hoosiers, 82 tackles, 2 sacks, and 3 forced fumbles. But here's where it gets interesting. This isn't just about Walker's talent, it's about the Raiders' linebacker room. Last season, the Raiders carried 7 linebackers on the 53-man roster because of all the uncertainty at the position. This year, it's a similar situation, and that opens the door for someone like Walker to sneak onto the team. Walker didn't get a ton of chances to show his coverage skills in the Big Ten, but when he did, he flashed potential. 8 pass breakups and 2 interceptions. He also has a special teams background, which is a key factor for back-end roster spots. Another wrinkle here, Walker transferred from James Madison, following his head coach Curt Cignetti to Indiana. When a coach makes a jump and brings players with him, that usually speaks to their leadership, work ethic, and fit. You can bet the Raiders have noticed that. Bottom line, between the roster need, his athletic ability, and his versatility, Jalin Walker is absolutely a name to watch in camp. He might not have been on my original 53-man projection, but if he pops during camp and preseason, he could absolutely stick.